Hello, everyone. My name's Laurie. Tell me, do you remember playing with your friends as a kid? Did you share your toys with them? Or maybe you held your favorite teddy bear closer to you so that no one would take it away from you? I remember I always played with other kids, and I was happy to share not only my toys, but also my sweets with everyone. And I would never think when I grew up I would easily share my boyfriend with other girls. How did this happen? You're gonna see if you watch this story to the end. So, let's go. When I was in high school, they chose me as cheerleading squad captain. I've been doing cheerleading ever since I was a kid. I'm a great dancer. I can even invent my own cool dance moves. So, it's not surprising all the girls chose me as a leader. We supported our high school basketball team. We went with them to different competitions in other cities. And we did great everywhere. When they chose me as the cheerleading captain, everyone immediately started saying I should take a closer look at the basketball team captain. After all, that's a typical story. Two captains, most popular guy and most popular girl of the school. Well, of course, we should start dating and become a couple. Paul, the basketball team captain, was a real playboy. All the girls were crazy about him, from junior to higher grades, and even to some young female teachers. He changed girls like gloves, so I never really considered him as a potential boyfriend. I wasn't that interested. I've never lacked the attention from the opposite sex. Boys often asked me out on dates, but because of my studies and my busy training schedule, I didn't have much time for guys and my personal life. Well, at one of the parties, after our basketball team won again, Paul suddenly came up to me and asked me to dance. We danced a little, and then he asked me to go outside for a walk. I agreed, but it was more because of my curiosity. As expected, he offered to date me, cheerfully noting that everyone has been waiting for this moment for a long time. And besides, we'd make a beautiful couple together, the king and queen of the school. I thought about it, we laughed, and I agreed. Probably then I was more influenced by everyone's expectations, school stereotypes, dozens of TV series and movies, where in any romantic story, there's a guy athlete and a girl cheerleader. I wasn't in love with Paul, and I don't think he was crazy about me, but all of a sudden, we saw a lot of advantages to being a couple. First, we often finished training at the same time, and he could accompany me home. Second, both me and him were finally left behind by obsessive fans. We both understood the last 2 years at school, we should train hard and show our best at the competitions. Because there were rumors going around that some official representatives of the universities and colleges will attend the school competitions to search for talent and then offer the best grants for training and entering the college or university. Anyway, we got together. We had common goals, and it really brought us closer. We didn't break up after a month or even 6 months. A year later, I couldn't imagine my life without Paul. Even his parents already considered me part of the family. Of course, at graduation, they chose us as the king and queen of the school. We were the most beautiful and the most popular couple at school. We were saying our goodbyes to the school, teachers hugged each other, and at this moment, I realized I was madly in love with Paul. It was so romantic. And of course, due to the hard training and our talents, the official representatives noticed us, and we both entered universities and got grants. Well, we regretted we would be in different universities, and Paul was immediately taken to the national basketball team. I joined my university cheerleading team. Yeah, we were very upset that we would have to live in different dorms, and we wouldn't study together. We would have to meet only when we had some free time, between studies and training, but we believed this would only make our relationship even stronger. Paul often picked me up from my university and accompanied me to my dorm. So, over time, my new girlfriend started asking me, "Hey, who's that crusher?" Of course, I told everyone this was Paul, my boyfriend, and how cool he was. Athletic, smart, reliable, anyway, a boyfriend of my dreams. I took Paul to our parties and introduced him to everyone. Do I have to say everyone was delighted to see him? Especially the girls, who were kind to my face but envious behind my back. Because Paul was he was perfect. Anyway, once we were celebrating one of my friend's birthdays, her name was Leslie. We had fun. We discussed our acquaintances and gossiped. You know, all the things girls usually do at pajama parties. Our conversation turned to Paul. Leslie shared she promised her parents she would go to their place over the weekend and introduce her boyfriend. but she didn't have a boyfriend. They broke up last week, and she didn't want to upset her parents. I jokingly suggested she rent Paul. He's a crusher. He's athletic and smart. Her parents would definitely be so happy to see their daughter with such a guy. We all laughed and forgot about it. Well, at least I thought we had forgotten about it. But the next day, Leslie came up to me at the university and asked me if my offer was still valid. She said she wouldn't mind renting Paul and even offered me a good price for the service. I didn't think my joke would go that far because, well, for example, a car is one thing and a boyfriend is another. How can you rent a human being anyway? And why would Leslie even think I was serious? I thought everyone understood I was just kidding. But Leslie insisted. She was almost crying, and I didn't want to upset her. I promised to talk to Paul. I said I needed to ask him what he thought of such an offer, and then I'd let her know. Was I really going to talk to Paul about this? I thought about the way I could explain everything to him. Like, Leslie was too upset. She's my friend. I really wanted to help her. Strange, but that very night, right when I wanted to open my mouth and talk to Paul about it, he suddenly complained he'd been fired from his part-time job, and he had to look for a new job. He totally didn't like the idea of scrounging off his parents. So I immediately told him about Leslie, and about the amount she offered for renting him for the weekend. I thought it over and told Paul about my joke, and about Leslie, and that this was really good money. What do you think Paul's reaction was? I admit, I was afraid he might be very offended or angry with me, but he took this offer with a sense of humor and in a very positive way. He said if I didn't mind taking money from my friend, he could play the role of a perfect boyfriend in front of Leslie's parents for a couple of days. It's not that hard for him. It was harder for me to accept this situation and his willingness to, well, actually become another girl's boyfriend for a while, for a couple of days. I was jealous and I didn't even hide it, but Paul convinced me there was no reason for that. Leslie didn't interest him, and they'd only play a couple in front of her parents for a weekend and that's it. I believed it. If you only knew how happy Leslie was when I told her Paul had agreed to go to her parents' place. She hugged me and told me I saved her life, and she was very grateful to me. I was nervous for the whole weekend that Paul was spending with Leslie. I imagined them together playing a pair of lovers and doing dirty things. But Paul was always texting me, telling me how things were going, and there wasn't much to pretend in front of Leslie's parents, as they were rather strict people. Anyway, it all ended great. Everyone was happy. Leslie's parents were delighted to see her boyfriend. Paul earned good money, and me, well, almost happy. Well, I made it up by myself, by my own words, so there was nothing to complain about. Of course, my close friends heard the story about renting Paul. Leslie told them everything, and we laughed together at the story. A little later, a friend of mine came up to me, asking to rent Paul for one evening. She was invited to a high school reunion, and somehow it wasn't so cool to go there alone, because everyone planned to be in couples. I discussed this with Paul, and he agreed again. He still hadn't found a job, and he urgently needed money. He was also amused by this game of the escort boy, as he called it. So these things started repeating. I can't say that renting Paul to my friends became some permanent business, but Leslie rented him several more times to see her parents and childhood friends. Other girls took him to parties and picnics. I was still jealous, but Paul was telling me there was nothing wrong with it. He had absolutely no feelings for the girls he escorted. But after a while, I started noticing some suspicious things. Paul started negotiating his own business affairs himself. He disappeared somewhere in the evenings, forgetting to text me where he was, with whom and what he was doing. I also noticed he was spending less money, as if he didn't earn it every night. To my question, when can we meet, he answered he was busy. His training went long. He had extra classes and so on. My conclusion was obvious. I was sure Paul was dating someone behind my back, and not for the money this time. I had no choice but to follow Paul and find out what he was hiding from me. And what a shock for me it was when I found out who exactly he was dating. That day, I left the university early and went to his to watch him. All of a sudden, he finished his classes ahead of time. He called someone, and a car came to pick him up a few minutes later. It was a very familiar car to me. It belonged to Leslie. I immediately texted him and asked him how he was doing and what his plans were for the evening. But Paul said he was still at the university, and then he would have an extra long training session. I couldn't believe my boyfriend and my GF were secretly dating behind my back. And I brought them together, even though I didn't think about such consequences at that time. So I decided not to wait, and I told Paul I knew everything. But imagine, he didn't even apologize to me. He said he never had any real feelings for me, but he fell in love with Leslie, and now couldn't help it. They were going to tell me this a long time ago, but they kept putting it off. And it's great I found out everything by myself. I felt betrayed, and I still can't forgive either of them, even though I understand I'm also the one to blame for what happened. Do you think it was all my fault? Or would it have happened sooner or later anyway, because Paul didn't have any real feelings for me? Write your answers in the comments below. I would love to hear your opinion and your words of support. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Click the like button and turn on notifications to always stay tuned and be the first to learn about new stories. Bye-bye, everyone!